Let's continue on with my series on my baby has a tongue tie. Should it be released or not? And what happens if I decide not to release? So I just recently posted a video on the 3 categories of babies that I tend to see in my office where families are choosing not to release. One category is babies that don't actually have ties. Their symptoms are mimicking those of ties and they resolve the time. And then the other 2 categories, the baby does have a true oral restriction. Parents may choose not to release even though they know there is a restriction, or there is a restriction and they are told the baby is not tied and the symptoms are from something else. So what are the consequences of having an undiagnosed or diagnosed tongue tie where we are choosing not to release? Well, there are really 3 domains or areas that ties can have an impact: the respiratory system, the digestive system, and the speech communication system. So the mouth is used for all 3 of these purposes: to breathe, to eat, and to speak. I am a speech pathologist and an IBCLC lactation consultant, and I am most concerned about breathing, followed by eating, followed by speech. And that has always been my mantra and mentality, even when I worked in the acute care in the hospital with trach and vent patients, when I was working with feeding and swallowing with brain injured or stroke patients. Breathing always comes first. So if we have an identified tie that's restricting movement of the tongue, it can have an impact on the airway. The roof of the mouth is the floor of the nose, and the tongue is supposed to be resting on that roof of the mouth, the palate, to help keep it flat. Because when it starts to bubble, you're going up into the airway and reducing airway space. This is where, with some cases, we can see mouth breathing, snoring, sleep difficulties because of oxygenation. So yes, depending on how the tongue frenula is attached to the tongue and the floor of the mouth, it can absolutely impact facial development, jaw development, palate development, which can have an impact on the airway. Snoring is never normal for humans. It is a symptom that something is happening in the airway. So if you have a snoring baby, that is a big red flag that something is going on. If you decide not to have a release and the palate's really high and narrow, it can cause dental crowding. It may result in the need for palate expansion or braces later on. It can also impact how we smile, right? A tight lip frenulum can cause a really gummy smile. This can also contribute to dental issues with being able to clean the teeth, using the tongue to get food out of the pockets of the gums between the lips, which can increase your likelihood of dental cavities. Okay, so that's kind of the respiratory crossing into feeding. If you have a tongue that's really restricted, that tongue can have difficulties moving solid foods to the jaw to be chewed, or it can get stuck in the cheeks. This can look like fatigue with chewing, pocketing food, difficulties chewing textures, coughing, gagging on foods, shutting down and restricting foods. Having the way the tongue inserts and the palate can also result in air swallowing. So if you have a high palate and a restricted tongue, this can increase the likelihood of air being swallowed, which causes reflux and digestive discomfort. So that colic and reflux can actually be caused by the tie. And then finally, speech. I'm not as concerned about speech. Speech therapists can work on those sounds. Some babies that have a pretty severe tie might have a lisp. They might have difficulties with R's and L's, S's and SH. Some may have no issues with their speech at all. The body learns to compensate, and some might struggle later on. So what if I don't release my baby's tongue tie? Could there be any consequences from that? Yes, in 3 different areas. But it's not like every baby will have all of them into the severity. Every body is unique in the symptoms and the issues that can be caused by that restricted tissue. Now you know.